Okay, I'm Juan José Güemes, chairman of the Entrepreneurship at Innovation Center at AI, and it is a pleasure for me to introduce you and to moderate, if it was possible to moderate them, Maria, Neda, Pedro, Nico, and Marco. Maria Benjumea is a serial entrepreneur. She founded her first company when just after graduating, an arts incubator. She's the founder also of Infoempleo. But I invited Maria today because 3 years ago, she founded a Spain startup. No, 4 years ago now. 4 years ago.
Three.
Three?
Three.
3 okay. 3 years ago, she founded a Spain startup, and she's the promoter of the most important event on entrepreneurship of Southern Europe and Latin America, a Spain startup now called the South Summit. How many of you have ever heard about the South Summit? Let me ask you, Maria, why the South Summit? What was in your mind 3 years ago when you launched first the Spain Startup and Investor Summit and now the South Summit?
Well, really we wanted a platform to prove to the world the talent, the innovation, and the opportunities from the South. And we did it together because, well, we started in 2012. Do you remember our first conversations, Juanjo?
I do.
And I think that if we all think about
Maria,
2012.
now we have the video.
Oh, lovely. It's
And
great.
I cannot stop it.
Welcome to the South Summit.
Best source of talent, of innovation, and of technology, which is you, the startups.
Entrepreneurship is not about age, it's about attitude.
Is about freedom.
Each of you guys are unique.
We are getting older, dear. The time's still on our side. Wanna take you with me, love. The time's still on our side. I gotta tell you in my arms and hold you close tonight. 'Cause good things happen on rainy days. The sun don't always shine. Good things happen on rainy days. Please don't change your mind.
I am startup. Crazy can be extremely positive.
This is what I do.
I mean, nobody said it was going to be easy.
We're talking about billion-dollar opportunities every year, and it's only getting better. We got 100 startups. They're gonna rock.
We are getting older, babe. The time's still on our side. I wanna take you with me, love. I need you by my side. Wanna hold you in my arms.
Do not think about limitations, think about possibilities.
We have lived something marvelous.
Porque nosotros no buscamos el éxito, buscábamos la felicidad.
If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
South Summit. South Summit.
South Summit. South Summit.
South Summit. Thank you.
Sorry, Maria, but
Sorry, it
I
was
didn't want to miss
amazing.
this video. Go ahead, please.
Really,
What did you
it
have in
was
your mind?
An extraordinary experience. So we really needed to create this platform. This platform where being together, putting together the most promising startup from the South, from the south of Europe, Mediterranean, and Latin America, with the top-tier international investors and the leading companies looking for innovation through startups. And that's why we've done, that's what is the South Summit? And now I start just when we had the video on, and it was 2012. You remember 2012, our first conversations, Juan? And I think that all of us, we can remember 2012, above all in Spain. I think was the worst year of the crisis. But you know, where some people saw crisis and terrible situation, we also found, and we really, what we saw was big opportunities, because I think that all of us know that we are in a new world, a world that moves really very, very fast, and this new world has lots of needs. So if there are needs, we have great deal of opportunities. And that's what we wanted to do, an action. And that's why we started with the Spain Startup together. Spain Startup, we started with IE Business School. We always go together. And we wanted not only to put together investors and startups, we wanted to work with people. Yes, to inspire people by showing the best startups, the best people who are entrepreneurs and that did it. And if they had done it, all of us can do it. The only thing that we have to do is just think about it, be absolutely in confidence that you can do it, and work to get it. So the first moment, as I said to you, we was putting together only investors that are also investors and startups are key players. But there are other two key players that were really very important to fostering the ecosystem. The institution, they have medios to improve it, and also the company. If the world moves very quickly, they need innovation permanently. And it's impossible that the companies inside their buildings could have that innovation. So what better really that get it through the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs here can get all they need, because in the summit, we try for them to visibility, investment, but also they need agreements with the companies, they need clients, they need support in technology, many things. And the companies really, they also can get the innovation they are looking for. So we arrived to the 2014, and this year we were, as you can see, really very happy. Because you know, first, this year has been the first global one of the South Summit. 28% of people from everywhere. And that's the most important, not only because it was 700,000 attendees, 440 investors, it's because really the innovation and the talent and the business was really great in the South Summit. But another thing that for me was extraordinary was to mix the tradition, to go into Las Ventas for the foreigners. If you don't know what bullfighting is, it's just the tradition of one Spanish export. So that tradition mixed with the innovation that need the companies and have the startups is really great. So everyone was looking around saying, oh, what's this that I'm pitching my startup here in the arena because I am a bullfighter. And of course, the startups are the best bullfighters we can imagine. So I think all of us can be a startup. I'm a startupera of 60 now, 60. So.
Thank you very much, Maria. And now let me introduce you. We will come back to the South Summit because we need to learn many more things about it. But now let me introduce you to Neda. Neda came back to his home city quite after taking his international MBA. Well, I'm not sure if Kuwait is your home city anymore. Because
no, of course it is my home city.
You are a Madrilean. If you ever need to know what's the best restaurant in Madrid, call Neda and ask him, and he will.
He knows it.
He knows everything about Madrid. But and he found a way. he found out the way of sharing part of his own IE experience with Kuwaiti entrepreneurs. Neda created Brilliantlab, which is a sort of venture lab. I mean,
exactly.
Just what you learn while taking your MBA at IE Business School. And it became very soon the most popular startups accelerator in Kuwait. He launched Zain Great Idea in partnership with Zain, which is a main mobile carrier in Kuwait and in the region, and in partnership also with IE Business School. And I can tell you that what we learned from this first experience is that there are very enthusiastic entrepreneurs in Kuwait. You can look at your back.
Oh, nice.
Very enthusiastic men and women. And women, we had more women than men. And indeed, after 2 years, Neda?
Yes.
After 2 years, how have evolved startups led by men and women? Which ones are more successful?
Well, to be honest, till now, men are taking over, but I think I can see like a very good curve of startup led by women are coming soon to the market.
Okay. And well, sometimes we don't know exactly what we were doing, that they were doing, Neda.
Yeah.
And but we spent an incredible time with these amazing entrepreneurs. And we're proud of being part of this entrepreneurship revolution that is taking place in Kuwait. So Neda, let me ask you, when we first talk about your idea of creating a sort of a venture lab in Kuwait and launching a startup contest in partnership with a big company in Kuwait, it seemed that it was almost impossible to raise interest in entrepreneurship in Kuwait. I mean, how do you see the landscape, the entrepreneurship landscape 3 years later, and how do you think that your ventures, Brilliantlab and Zain Great Idea, has impacted in the Kuwaiti startup ecosystem?
Thank you so much, Juanjo, for your question. I'm going to definitely go back and to answer it. But before going there, I would like to thank you, thank Julia, all the team behind the IE Alumni Forum. It's really great organization since we arrived here in Madrid. And would like also to thank everyone here in the audience. Like you guys been here since like 8, 9 in the morning, and you're still listening to us. We hope like we're going to make it a little bit of excited session for you. For me, like talking about innovation and entrepreneurship, the first innovation lesson I've learned, actually when I was studying at IE Business School, I took a class with Paris Deletras. Everyone knows Paris Deletras. He's actually sitting in the back there. I presented Brilliantlab for him, and he gave me an F. So he said, go back and develop something else. This is not going to work back, especially back in our like part of the world. So entrepreneurship or innovation is about, taking things seriously, and you try out and you pivot around the idea or the business model you're trying to bring. So I went back to the country and I started like developing this Brilliantlab accelerator, and I find out that people in Kuwait, especially like in my age or even like more younger, they're actually very well educated, but they have only one problem, which is they're less exposed. And actually, I realized that when I was in Madrid, that I was actually less exposed. I mean, Neda Aldehany before 2010 is not the same Neda Aldehany after graduating from IE Business School. That's actually the same. That's actually my case when I was studying here at IE. So going now, Juanjo, to your question and how's the entrepreneurship outlook looks at in our area, talking about Zain Telecom, talking about the Ministry of Youth, I think bringing innovation is to make a mutual interest between your strategy and the other company's strategy. So if you find like Ministry of Youth or Zain Telecom in Kuwait, they have a similar strategy that the thing that you will do I mean, you will find out a millions way of anchor to make a lot of programs or a lot of initiatives going on back in my country. Innovation is about not really doing it yourself. You need to take care of your stakeholder. You need to convince your stakeholder to join your journey. And that's actually what happened in the last 2 years. Moving forward, I think there is a tremendous movement happening in the entire GCC, if it's not even the Middle East. I don't know, maybe it's the oil prices going down and people like trying to think differently now, or it's just the nature of the people now thinking like to do their own project and to explore the world differently. So there is definitely a tremendous, amazing wave in terms of entrepreneurship, especially in Kuwait. And we're actually looking at this movement and we're trying really to bring an innovative solution for our entrepreneurs back in the country. Right now, we're actually developing our first workspace. So I believe we're early stage entrepreneurs. They don't need an office. Early stage entrepreneurs, they need to be in the right place. So that's actually the part of how we are like capitalizing on this opportunity in Kuwait. I hope we will accelerate more, and we have Marco Marinucci. He's the co-founder of Mind the Bridge in San Francisco, and we're doing a program with him. We're going to be like in San Francisco starting from 2nd of March. We're going to spend 3 weeks in his incubator, taking some learning lessons from his mentors and the incubators there, visiting some big companies in San Francisco, lawyers, like understanding the IP process for tech entrepreneurs. That's one of our upcoming program also.
Thank you. Marco. Marco is being introduced by Neda. Marco is the founder and managing partner of MTEs, a seed venture capital fund based in Silicon Valley, and he's also the founder and CEO of Mind the Bridge Foundation, the non-for-profit organization that connects the most innovative startups with Silicon Valley partners and investors. Marco, is today a good business to invest in startups?
Today is a good business to invest in startups. It depends where. Yeah, it's a fun business, as you can tell. We're all having fun here. I mean, if you look at statistics, there are, especially the very early stage, there is no average, because first of all, it's actually very hard to track all the investments being done from people that put, $20,000 at a time. But as an asset class, actually, there's been a few reports being published by Kaufman Foundation a few years ago, that actually showing that if you have your right portfolio, that means more than 15 companies, and if you are active in areas where there are exit strategies, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, then that becomes a very interesting asset class as an investment, actually better than hedge funds. It's kind of a top, like 24% IRR, which is kind of interesting. I mean, say that people that invest in startups, especially early stage, that for the most part, they don't do it for the money. They don't do it only for the money. They do it for promoting this movement. They're doing to see the kind of the effects at a social level as well that entrepreneurship is producing, right? So building your own job and writing your own job description is so much empowering rather than looking for a job, for example. So it's feeling good of doing good, right? So and it's definitely a long-term kind of a game, and it's a hits game. To some extent, it's not much different from going to Vegas. An investment side is really what normally pays the whole fund, the whole investment that you've been doing is 1% of the companies that you're investing. So you know by default that 50, 60% are going down, which is part of the game. But every single one that you look at is the one that's going to pay back for the whole fund. So.
And Marco, you are based in Silicon Valley and you lived there since many years ago, but you are originally from Italy and you still work a lot with European companies, European startups and big corporations. I mean, comparing US and Europe ecosystems, what's different?
It's funny, I was thinking when Neda was actually talking, and Maria as well, we're much more similar. We all dress kind of the same. Our culture is so much more similar than maybe the large corporations actually are represented from our own countries. So there is a movement of entrepreneurship that is very much connected. I cross paths with each of these guys here at different stages of my life in San Francisco, Kuwait, in Spain, and it's actually very similar, kind of the objectives and the reason why we're all there. So at a macroeconomical level, it's actually very interesting. Most of the new entrepreneurial hotbeds are very similar at the core. What is very different today is actually the results, the economical results that this movement are creating. It's still there. If you look at now, as Mind the Bridge, we've been publishing reports in the last few months, really looking at what's the economical impact of entrepreneurship. So, I mean, the social impact is right there, is clear, and is great. It makes you feel good. The economical impact still has to come, especially in Europe or in upcoming geographies. And that's still the biggest difference. So there's a lot of excitement on the production of a grassroots innovation. The biggest difference, if you look at statistics from especially Silicon Valley and the rest of the world, is that the vast majority of big hits, of exits, happen there. Even from the interesting startups, I was writing this report, there is more than 80% of the exits of the successful startups in Europe, guess where that happened? Happened still in US. So that's kind of the missing gap that we need to fill. And that's projects like Startup Europe that we just started a year ago, and IE is one of the partners there, is really focused on try to replicate not just the excitement of the co-working spaces, accelerators, but to move the world of thousands of startups into more that become scale-ups that have economical impact that can actually move the needle. And so really the missing point today is to have the large corporations feeling more comfortable with their integration with early stage startups. And for the most part, to acquire them at a certain moment in time.
Okay, now let me introduce you to Pedro Moneo. Pedro is the founder and CEO of Opinno. Opinno is an international open innovation network that connects innovation hubs all around the world. And he's also the publisher of MIT's Technology Review in Spanish and Portuguese editions. And he's also an angel investor, and most importantly, he's an Eisenhower Fellow. Welcome, Pedro. Pedro, you deal every day with entrepreneurs and science and technology. Tell us, what's coming next? What do you see?
I wanted you to ask me that question, actually.
Yes, and I have the
there's one thing about me that makes me special, I think, is that I love science and entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship with science. And what I want to discuss today is that I think there's a huge world beyond iPhone apps, right? And I wanted to show you this picture. People who know me are tired of seeing this picture because I show it everywhere. But in that graph, you have a white line that describes how the cost of microprocessors, of silicon, of computing, is going down with time. So that's the Moore's law. And it describes how every 2 years the cost goes down by half, basically. In the green line, you will see that there's a line that follows until 2007, then drops dramatically to a factor of 1,000. And that's the biotech revolution. That's the cost of sequencing one full genome. And the message I wanted to give you today is that we're facing a time where we're in the middle of several industrial revolutions at the same time. Just the biotech revolution is an order of thousands of times stronger than the IT revolution. If we've seen this much progress in 30 years due to semiconductors, imagine where we will be due to genetics. And together with genetics, we could talk about nanotech, robotics, and many other things, right?
Pedro, is it getting easier to transfer technology to the market through entrepreneurship?
I think that as the cost goes down for these technologies, biotech, clean tech, energy, material science have a huge problem in going to the market because they usually needed big investments. And the new platforms and the new technologies we're inventing are helping entrepreneurs in science build big technologies with those in those industries. And if that picture was my first message, that we are facing a huge revolution, my second message is that I'm very worried. And the reason I'm worried is because if you look in any of your classes at Instituto de Empresa, if you look at the biggest companies in Europe in market capitalization, you will see very few companies that are new and that are R&D intensive, that are science intensive. And that means that we're still not able to build, the big technologies in all the industries that are feeding our jobs. So if we don't build big technologies with science and with other sciences than IT, we're going to face a big time of unemployment. So my second message is that we really need to make our homework in Europe and be able to bring entrepreneurship outside IT.
Yeah.
And we need to build big companies that are worth billions of dollars and create thousands of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And finally, last but not least, Nico Goulet is a managing partner at Adara Venture Partners. You have invested in technology many times. And so do you agree, Marco? Is it a good business investing in startups?
Yeah, I mean, it's our business. We are entrepreneurs in the investing activity. And I fully agree that there are great opportunities in the south, and particularly here in Spain and Italy and other countries in the south are really good. Engineering is high quality, it's low cost. It means that if you invest early when you need a lot of engineers and you're capable of creating global companies, those companies can go on to be global and they can get higher valuations, which means we sell high, we buy low, we make money for our investors. Our business is making money for our investors, so that's kind of maybe less social than some would put it, but it's the reality. And we're kind of the link between the savings that are in the pension funds and the inspiring ideas that are put on the table by the entrepreneurs and the brighter minds than us.
Nico, here you have a lot of entrepreneurs and startup funders. What kind of startups are you looking for now?
Well, we do companies that are slightly more advanced in the phase of development, so Series A and Series B. ICT, we don't do any social media. We do any heavy engineering. Companies that require a lot of engineers, because that's what we believe in. And we look for entrepreneurs that are basically going to want to create a global company early and then transition to essentially Silicon Valley, because we have recognized that 85% of all the transactions that took place over the last 5 years took place there, and if we want to sell our companies, we need to sell them there. I think to your comment on the fact that exits are happening in Silicon Valley, that doesn't really matter whether the exits are in Silicon Valley. If the better exits are in Silicon Valley, let's just go there and do them. But the companies are global. We have several companies that are now pretty large, with quite a significant amount of investment coming from Silicon Valley, built on the back of engineering in Spain. Maybe 200 people, 300 people in the companies. Half of those are still in Spain, and they've still retained their Spanish nature. This is as if, when you're born in Spain, you will always love the country and remain Spanish at heart, right? So a company that goes, and even if it gets sold in Silicon Valley, it still was a Spanish company, even if along the way it became a California company or a Delaware corporation and got sold in Silicon Valley. It's still a Spanish company, and the founders were still Spanish, and they built it up essentially here initially. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to this concept of we lose the companies to Silicon Valley. No, they just upgrade to Silicon Valley, but those are Spanish companies, and we have to be proud and happy about the fact that they do that, thanks to people like Mo.
It's getting crowded on our side of the world, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's competitive. I mean, it's competitive because that's the nature of the game, but
Come
this
to
is
Spain.
a Darwinian game.
Come to Spain, Marco.
Out of Spain. Come to Spain, yeah.
Or even quite.
He comes often.
You come very often, and you are involved. You help a lot. As Adara, not only Nico, but many other partners are helping and supporting the South Summit. So Maria, coming back to the South Summit, and based on your experience and the thousands of startups that have submitted their projects to the South Summit before the Spain Startup and Investor Summit, what are the key ingredients for driving innovation through entrepreneurship?
I think we have two key two keys, but two keys that can be three. The first one is person. It's the person, is the talent, is to work and develop to transform our technical and management skills. Also inspirations. We really have to be convinced that we can do it. And so we have to be perseverant because it's very easy. It's very easy, no. It's very difficult, and we have a time where things, it seems that they are not going to go on, but you have to be perseverant. And also not be afraid of failure. Failure is something that we have to consider that we must learn of it, no? And ambitions for the project. And I think the second one is the ecosystem. For the successful of the startups, really, they need to start, they need to live, and they need to grow in an ecosystem that make it easy for them. And so here we are all, and the institutions and so on to make that done. But also, we need to create a space where they really can meet all the different, as we were talking at the beginning, and that's why we all, because all we have created, all of us together, created the South Summit. Yes, to be a platform where being together the different players, no? So it's the best thing to improve the startups.
And one of the things that I remember you had in mind since the very beginning of Spanish Startup Investor Summit and later the South Summit was not just inviting startups and entrepreneurs, but also big companies, big corporations that could eventually leverage on this startup ecosystem around the South Summit to foster innovation within the company. So, and how do you think, I mean, 3 years later, after 3 editions, how do you think that the South Summit, the Spanish Startup Investor Summit has contributed to improve, to foster innovation among big corporations?
Juanjo, I love this question because I think that the change is so huge. It's so huge. I remember the first year when we were going to the companies just to tell what we were doing and so on, and they were, well, always there were companies, and we all know them, Telefónica or Repsol or some of them that were really working in innovation, in open innovation. The Change and Iberdrola, there were some of them, but now 40 companies were there. They are leading companies in innovation, but they really are clever, and they have their eyes, their ears absolutely open to identify by startups, through startups, the innovation they need, no? So really, I think that the fostering of the ecosystem is really very, very huge. And let me open the book, because if we see all the startups, the winners, Meetlab, Luday, last year CartoDB, and one from IE, like was in the job site, absolutely disruptive innovation.
Many from IE, actually.
Many from IE, but one of the winners, many from IE, but one of the winners. So really the innovation, the fostering innovation that we can create, any of us, is huge. So I think we have to go to it.
Marco, Mind the Bridge also connects startups with big companies. What do you think big companies can learn from startups regarding innovation?
It's a whole lot. It's actually a mutual benefit. That's the other thing. Building ecosystems where startups are in a vacuum doesn't bring a lot of results, right? So the gap of scale-ups, that is the next level after the beginning of the startups, is still big because a lot of these ecosystems that now are starting, keeping the startups somehow in a vacuum. So the cross-pollination is actually central. And this is kind of, again, back to Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, it's kind of natural. Also because the large corporations of today was a startup last year, right? So the Google of the world 12 years ago was a startup. Twitter was a startup, still is a startup today, and is buying dozens of companies every month. All right, so there is this cultural gap that there doesn't exist because the velocity is so extreme. Then, culturally, you're actually the same people. Then you can like or not on dealing with the larger corporations, but there isn't that cultural gap. Whereas in these markets, it's pretty much everywhere, but not US, there's still a huge gap. There's a cultural gap. So what these guys are doing is fantastic because it's really creating somehow really a culture of entrepreneurship, and some of that is very hard to replicate. These days, actually, I was rereading a book from Peter Thiel, one of the hot minds these days in Silicon Valley, right? And the book is From Zero to One. Actually, highly recommend it, guys. From Zero to One is, I think, is a good picture of a very controversial, by the way, mind of Silicon Valley. But one of the things, I actually took a note here. I was reading it yesterday. What Peter Thiel, one of the mentions is that says, brilliant thinking is rare, but courage is even in shorter supply than genius. Courage is even shorter supply than genius. So this is actually the one thing that's very hard then to transmit, right? If you don't grow up in a culture where this is spread out, and the fact that most of the startups, especially in Silicon Valley, are not built by MBA kind of people for the most part, is because really for the most part, it's not that you need to be crazy, but that helps, right? So I think the biggest business are the ones where the normal people don't see a clear path of growth. So Larry Page, I remember when I was at Google, kept saying, you need to have a healthy disrespect of the status quo. Healthy disrespect of the status quo. That's really what makes a big shift. So those are kind of the topics that is very hard then to induce within large corporations. But I think little by little, events like the South Summit, all the events where actually there is a clear tendency, IE is doing a great job with that, try to mix these two worlds, these cross-pollinating, that's going to change a lot.
Pedro, is it easier innovation for startups?
Is it, sorry?
Easier innovation for startups compared to what happens in big companies?
Well, what I was thinking about when you were discussing before is that this is a very fun time because things are starting to change very fast.
Yeah.
And the animals that survive best are the ones who are able to adapt. I think the startup is the most resilient and adaptable animal in the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And the fun comes because very large organizations, most large organizations, are starting to look at startups as models of organizations. So lean startup, agile development, and all these things that were very popular in the early 2000s in Silicon Valley now are becoming main trends in the usual management of very large organizations. So entrepreneurs have a lot to say to execs in big firms. That's good news.
We're almost out of time. Maria, what's coming in the next edition of the South Summit?
Next edition, many things. Above all, more business,
is it going to be in
more
Las Ventas?
investors. It's going to be in Las Ventas because I think everyone. I ask you if you've been there. You tell me, please, if you want us to repeat Las Ventas. If you think that Las Ventas is the place just to do the South Summit, if it's it, we'll do it again. And more business, more investors, and I think that we have to do something really special and added value to everyone.
When is it going to be happening?
It's 7th, 8th, and 9th of October.
You are invited, Neda.
Of course.
And if you like to bring some OIT entrepreneurs,
definitely,
they are invited too. No problem. And if you bring your vice minister, she will be very welcome at the South Summit. Sign means something good, isn't it?
Good,
isn't it? Something good. Thank you very much for coming. Welcome. Okay, thank you very much. A warm applause to these outstanding entrepreneurs and innovators. And next week we open the South Summit, and if you have a startup, you can submit your project. We will come. Okay, thank you, Maria.
Bye bye. Thank you. Thank you very much, Juanjo.